this video, we're going to be analysing a simple melodic phrase and using it to create a cool sounding lick that we can use as part of an improvisation. This lick uses what we can call target notes. So these are the notes within the chords in the backing track itself. As well as learning this melody, we're also going to have a look at a few techniques that we can add to give it a bit of a human feel. So usually when approaching a backing track like this, the first thing that we do is go to our scales. We'll play A minor pentatonic scales over an A minor backing track, which is cool. But what we really want to do is try and make it sound a little bit more tuneful. It's so easy to run up and down the scales mindlessly, aimlessly, and something's going to sound okay. But if we are able to identify what's actually going on in the track and highlight those notes, our lines are going to become much more melodic, much more quickly. So this backing track goes from A minor to D minor. So what we need to do is find the notes from A minor, the notes from D minor, and use them over the respective chord. Have a listen to this melody again without all the frills and ornaments on top. So as previously mentioned, this backing track goes from A minor to D minor. 2 bars of A minor, 2 bars of D minor. Have a listen to that on its own. So as previously mentioned, we're using target notes here to create a really tuneful melodic lead. This is because we're playing the notes within the chords themselves. Every time the chord changes, the notes that we aim for changes, and you can really hear that. So when playing this lead line, there are a few notes that are outside of these target notes, and this is okay. We can use them really as passing notes to get to the next phrase. We don't always have to stick to just these notes alone. It would be quite limiting, but we can start a phrase and end a phrase on them, and it's still going to sound quite tuneful. So the first thing we need to do is identify which ones of these notes in the melody are the target notes. So we need to find an arpeggio that's built around a minor chord. We have a minor chord here, so therefore we need a minor arpeggio. A minor arpeggio is built up of a root note, a minor third, and a perfect fifth. So these are the notes that we need to find. Let's start just by discussing the first line. So these are the notes that are going to be played around the A minor chord. So A minor arpeggio is where we're looking. So our root note here is going to be an A. We're looking for 1, 3, and 5. So 1, the root note, is going to be an A. This is the first note of the melody, 7th fret on the D. If we're not aware that this is an A, we can use the A on the top string to figure out. So A on the top string is the 5th fret. If we go down a string and along 2 frets, we have this second A. This is where the melody starts as well, which is of course why it does that. So the next note that we're looking for is a minor third. So this can be found directly down a string and back 2 frets. A minor third is 3 semitones away from the root note. So root note here, 1, 2, 3, which if you go down a string is here, down a string 2 frets back. These are the same note. 3 semitones away from the root, down a string 2 back. Let's have a listen to those played together. Root note, minor third. So you'll need a bit of an understanding about intervals here in order to put this together. I've got some good videos that are coming out on a course soon on this very subject. So here we have root note, minor third. The next interval that we need to find is a perfect fifth. So remember, minor arpeggio is going to be root, minor third, perfect fifth. To find a perfect fifth, we can just use our fifth chord shapes. So a power chord is a fifth chord, which you might be aware of from the top strings. And this works down here as well. So our root note was here, 7th fret on the D string. Power chord shape. That gives us a fifth here, 9th fret of the G. So we have 1, 3, and 5. If you look back at the melody that we had before, it kind of sits mostly around these 3 notes. Last one there is a little bit interesting. So this is between the minor third and perfect fifth. So this is a perfect fourth. It's not one of the target notes, but we're using the other ones to get there. So we're starting on the root using the third and the fifth, ending on the fourth. What you'll notice is that this little melodic phrase repeats itself for the second half of the melody, and the next time it finishes on the minor third. So this is where our target notes come into play. Let's have a listen to that whole thing. So there we have the first part of the phrase then, built mostly around those target notes in that chord. You may notice that this shape is quite familiar to our pentatonic scales. That's because a minor pentatonic scale has a first, a third and a fifth in it, as well as a fourth and a seventh. We play the fourth in the melody, and the seventh comes a bit further down, but we'll come to that later. So we're picking out the individual notes of the scale in order to fit with the chord that's in the backing track. It's maybe a bit different that we're using the fifth down here, rather than the fifth directly below, but that's just to do with the way that we play the phrase. And actually, to be honest, doing it this way allows us to break out of that one pentatonic box shape. You might be quite likely to sit around here in your solos, but if we add the fifth here, kind of takes us outside of the box shape, which is really the goal. So this first melodic phrase kind of repeats the same thing twice, but ends on the third the second time. It's quite a good way to spice up your soloing. Just repeat the same line twice and either start or end on a different note. Let's have a listen to that first line again. So at the end of this first line, we now change to a D minor chord. So we want to do exactly the same thing, but this time with a D. So our root note is going to be the 7th fret of the G. If we know that a D is the 5th fret on the A string, we can find the octave of this by going down 2 strings and along 2 frets. So again, we're looking for a root note, a minor third and a perfect fifth. Let's just do the same thing that we did with the A minor. One thing that you're going to have to notice here is that there is a difference in tuning between the D and the G and the G and the B strings. So if you use the 5th fret to tune your guitar, it doesn't work with that string. Everything has to get pushed down 1 fret. We still have 3 semitones for this minor third from the root. 1, 2, 3. But this time, rather than being down a string and back 2 frets, a minor third is just down a string and back 1 fret. Major third, directly below, minor third, back 1 fret. Again, read up on your intervals if you're a bit unsure about this. So here we have root note, minor third, and the perfect fifth. We can kind of do the same thing, power chord shape, but because of the tuning of the strings, we need to push it down again. So rather than being this shape, not good, that's like a half diminished sort of flat 5 sound there. We need to push it down more, which means that the fifth can be found on the 10th fret of the B. So that arpeggio from the start is going to be like this. If you have a look at the melody, you notice that it's kind of made up exclusively around those target notes. So the biggest change here from regular pentatonic soloing is this note here. That note isn't in an A minor pentatonic scale. So when we change to the D minor chord, if we play that note, we're highlighting the minor third in the D chord, and that pulls us out of this predictable sounding pentatonic scale run. It's a really good way to highlight the chord change. Again, target notes, targeting the notes in the chord underneath. So have a listen to this melodic phrase from start to finish and pay attention to when the chords change. So now that we've learned the melody and looked at the notes from a theoretical point of view, It's a nice idea to add in some frills and ornaments to make it sound a bit more human-like. Otherwise it kind of sounds like a programmed MIDI controlled guitar, which isn't really that nice. Have a listen to just the first line of the lick with some hammer-ons and some slide and some vibrato in there. Let's listen to that a little bit slower. So we've got a number of things going on here. The first thing that we want to do is slide into this first note. So rather than a 7, we're going to start on 5 with the 3rd finger. Slide the whole hand down. So we've got slide, and then we're going to do a hammer on from that 5th fret again to the 7th fret, down to the next string. Doing a hammer on like this is a really good way to build up to the move to the next string. So we have slide, hammer on, then we're going to do another slide this time to that perfect 5th. Sounds really cool. It sounds a lot more interesting than just playing those notes individually. Again, this is what I mean by adding a human sort of feel to it. Here we go again from the start, slide. After the slide, back to the 5th fret and another hammer on to the 7. When we get to the 7, keep all of your fingers down here. Once we've got there, we want to add a little bit of vibrato onto that, on that last note. Nothing too much, nothing too crazy, just a little bit to add a little bit of colour into it. So for this, up and down, make sure you keep all your fingers down from where they were before. Not side to side. It's a bit harder to control that, but just subtly up and down. Let's try that from the start. So already there's quite a lot more going on there, and it doesn't sound like it's targeted, it sounds melodic. For the second half of that, we're just going to do the same thing again, but this time end with the 1st finger, a little bit of vibrato also. Have a listen. Have a listen to that whole first line. So we're going to add kind of similar things into the second line, but this time, rather than slide with the 3rd finger, we're going to slide with the middle finger. And this is to do with the position that we're changing to. So we noticed that the minor 3rd was down a string and back a fret. So we want to go. So same again, slide for the first note, down for the minor 3rd, slide from the 8th fret to the 10th fret to get to that perfect 5th. A little bit of vibrato with the 1st finger. And the second time around. So here we're doing a little quarter bend with that 1st finger. We don't need to aim for a specific pitch here, it's kind of a little bluesy thing. It's supposed to be in between notes just to make it sound a little bit different. And then we're walking back down the pentatonic scale here. Coming up to the 5th fret of the D string. This is where the line finishes, but actually it really wants us to move on to repeating the same thing. So it wants us to finish on the 7th fret. Here. That's an A again. So what you're kind of doing is going from the D minor chord and using this little phrase to take us back in and land on the A for when it changes back to the A chord. We purposefully changed for the 2nd chord, but in the backing track it repeats the same 2 chords over and over, so here we're predicting where it's going to go. And you can just repeat the whole thing all over again. So have a listen to this whole thing again with all these little extra bits added. Try and pay attention and note where these target notes are within this melody. So feel free to try and make up your own melodies with these target notes. It can feel a little bit limiting to start with, but just have a look at adding in some ornaments, some slides, some vibrato, some hammer-ons, some pull-offs, and this should make it a little bit more interesting. When moving between the notes, feel free to use the notes from the pentatonic scale or the natural minor scale around about it. We don't exclusively have to play the target notes, but it is a good place to aim for.